And I think it's great because we spend so much time on these podcasts talking about principles and concepts and strategies and things like that. And it's the people that come on here that are wise enough to know that preparedness and personal protection, interpersonal protection, is so far beyond just punching, kicking, beyond the physical. And I think a lot of people don't get that. In fact, that kind of ties in a little bit to what my quote of the week is, which is from Miyamoto Musashi. He says, when you attain the way of strategy, there will not be one thing you cannot see. And then he says, you must study hard. When you attain the way of strategy, there will not be one thing you cannot see. You must study hard. So attaining the way of strategy, understanding these strategies and principles and concepts, and not just knowing how to do combat, not just being physically capable of engaging in combat, but really understanding combat. Because when you understand combat, every move your opponent make means something. Everything they do, every little facial expression, everything they say, all these things add up to something. You're able to, and when you're able to understand that and decode that or more quickly than someone else, it's easier for you to execute the best strategy to deal with the person.
Welcome back to the Core Combatives podcast, an RMA experience. I'm here together again with my mentor, my coach, Shihan Walt, Lysak, the founder of the Cento method, the RMA methodology. And we're going to have like 4 amazing blocks in this podcast. We're going to keep going with the BJJ Daily Dozen, those great ideas and mindset for competitors. And I think like we mentioned before, this applies to many other martial arts, not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We will talk about the preparedness principles. I will share with you guys something that happened with me. And then Shihan Walt, Lysak, I already spoke to him on the phone. And he already gave me some tips. I think you guys, once he gives his take on what happened, I think you guys are going to enjoy this topic, the preparedness principles. We're going to have the RMA warrior principles, as we always have. And we're introducing actually the quote of the week, and it will be our last block. So don't forget to please share with your friends this podcast. Word of mouth, like Shihan was saying, is the best way to spread the podcast. Hit the like button, hit the notifications button, and also send your comments, send your requests. We would love to work on your questions. So thanks so much, Shihan, again. Let's start with our podcast.
Sure. So just real quick, I'll just do a quick review of what the Daily Dozen were. And remember that before the Daily Dozen, those first 12 elements we want you to work on, we have the 3 Ps. Remember, always pre, present, and post. What pre is what you do before the competition. Present is what you do while you're at the competition or the event. And then post is what happens afterwards. Okay. And then the 12 elements, I'll just review all 12 of them again, were the mental and emotional preparation element, which we've done. Was the coach connection, was also another one that we've done. Tonight, we'll be talking about the professional and practical matters, as well as training partners and trainers. Okay. Then in the future, we'll be getting to, again, conditioning, which involves warm-ups and training and workout plans and journaling. We'll be covering also nutrition and hydration, also technical and strategic development. We'll be covering rest and rehab elements, drills for skills, as well as rolling and sparring, researching every aspect of the sport, and of course, replicating the competition dynamic as much as possible. That's all very, very important. So let's get into the professional and practical matters. So what does this involve? This includes choosing, first of all, which organization or event you're interested in competing in, right? Okay, you're considering the cost, the location, the distance of the event, the weight division you want to be in, what the rules are, how do they line up with your strategy, your skill sets. If you're a big leg locker, you may choose a certain kind of event that more involves leg locking. If there's certain types of, you're maybe a little bit of a better wrestler. There's certain games, certain competitions, certain rules, sport versions of the sport, whether it's Abu Dhabi, whether it's IBJJF or whatever the case may be. If it's Eddie Bravo or any one of those, there are little variables in how they do things. So you may scout out certain events, Naga, so on and so forth, and see certain ones that you you tend to lean towards. And of course, gammon, which is one of the best, right? So any one of these. So, regardless of what it is, you consider the cost, consider the location, consider the distance, consider the weight division, consider the rules and any other regulations or formalities related to the event. Make sure you familiarize yourself with all these things. And again, as I said, remember that concept of the weight of fear, right? Well, if you have 1,000 pounds of fear on your back going into a competition, or 40 pounds of fear, 40 is going to be much more manageable. Again, it's not that we're going to totally eliminate fear, but we want to reduce that pressure. And it's not just fear that we're talking about. It's just inconveniences. Anything that's an inconvenience or a bother or whatever gets your mind focused off of anything except what you're there to do is a distraction. And all those little things add up and weigh on you and can affect how you perform. So by eliminating all those things, by being organized, by knowing what you need to do and what you need to not do before, during, and after the event, it just takes away a lot of that pressure, a lot of that stress, and is going to allow you to focus and really bring your A game when you go and compete. Another element of the professional practical matters is making sure you register in time. Make sure you register in time. There can be deadlines, obviously, maybe whether it's to get you register early to save money. Some people like to register early, to save the money. But some people like to register late. And one of the reasons they may register late, some people will say, is they want to find out who's in their division. Maybe that gives them a chance to scout that person out, find out a little bit about them, do a little bit of research, look up if there's any videos available on YouTube or Facebook or whatever the case may be. And it also gives that other person less time to scout you out and know that you're in the competition. So it's strategic to some degree, but that's obviously a personal call. It doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but it's something that can be factored in. Then at a practical level, you got to consider, finances and responsibilities. I mean, can you even afford to be doing this? Are you, again, when you're doing this stuff, maybe you can get someone to sponsor you, maybe get someone to lend you the money. Maybe you just really shouldn't be doing it. Maybe you should be paying your mortgage or paying your child support or things like that first. But make sure that you consider those things, and take those things into consideration. Okay. And I've made sacrifices like that in the past where even early on in my martial arts career, I've gone places and slept in my car because we couldn't afford a hotel, doing things like that because I just love training and traveling around the country, training with the best guys. So I understand that mindset. I'm not really putting it down, but just be realistic. You don't want to lose your job or have something like that happen because you do a competition. So you got to consider the cost of travel, the cost of lodging, food, the equipment or gear that you might need for yourself or for someone else. Can you even get the time off work in the first place? A lot of times you that may be an issue. Okay, and obviously if you go and you call out sick, quote unquote, and then they see you on Facebook, with a championship, cup or
with
a
the
belt
medal
or a medal or something, that might not look too good either. So you got to be aware of all those things. So you make sure it's not on the same day as your child's wedding, and if it is, at least let them know that you can't make it. I'm joking, so these are some of the things to take into consideration. I love that Professor Luigi brought up another point too. Even things like a babysitter. You can't just, maybe you can't bring the kids, or you can't just leave kids. So you might need to line up a babysitter. Even some little think of those little practical things that sometimes we just get excited. We say, "Oh, I'm going to do that tournament." You do it, and then you don't consider all the elements that are little barriers that could get in the way and can be distractions and inconveniences, and even put pressure on you again that stops you from training to your best, and so on and so forth. So these are things to consider. When you get to once you arrive at the event, you need to check in at the front desk. You need to get a schedule of the day's events that's going to show what order things happen in. Again, I said what order they happen in, not what time, because it's really hard to find many events that are going to be like bing, bing, bing on time. There are some that, like Gammon runs a really smooth approach, and there's a lot of other events that do a decent job. But again, you're generally not going to find out what time, but you can find out what order things happen in. Then you need to find out where do I weigh in? Where do I need to weigh in? And then you need to go and actually weigh in. And once you weigh in, you need to maybe check out the mats, find a place where you can relax, and make sure you're keeping your nerves in check. A lot of people like to wear headphones, before an event and listen to music. Some people put literally, intense music on to kind of get themselves pumped up. I generally recommend listening to something that's more mellow, because you're not going to need to get pumped up once the match starts, right? That will happen organically. That's going to happen all by itself. So you don't really, just put something that's going to keep you calm, keep you relaxed, and make sure you keep yourself hydrated. Be sure to just take little sips throughout the day, small sips, regularly throughout the day. You got to also be aware of that you may have to go to the bathroom and how to time that with your matches and so on and so forth. You're going to be mindful to not to eat too much or too little throughout the day. Again, that's something you can do little by little throughout the day. And a really important thing is don't take anything as far as like a special supplement or special drink or something, or eat anything that you wouldn't or don't eat or drink on hard training days. So because that can really have taking an unusual food or supplement on the day of an event can really have an effect that could backfire you drastically on the day of the competition. So that's something we really recommend against. Be sure to warm up before your ring is called. You have to warm up. You don't want to step onto the mat dry, right? Break a good sweat before you compete. You can often use wearing a hoodie or sweatpants or additional clothing of some sort that can help you break a good sweat and then keep it. Make sure you do various types of warm-ups. Could be light rolling, could be drilling, could be calisthenics, whatever the case might be, but break that sweat. You don't want to tire yourself out, but you really should kind of feel like you feel after you do your first 2 or 3 rolls. Usually notice when you're rolling or grappling in the academy, you do roll 2-3 times. That's when you start to feel really loose and technically at your best, especially if you're a little older like me, and not Professor Luigi yet, but me anyway.
Absolutely,
But
like me. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I noticed myself when I first step on the mats, now being 53, going on 54. I feel like sometimes like I'm 100 years old after doing this for all these years. But after I get that sweat going and get loose, I was like, okay, I feel younger again. I can actually feel 25, 30 years old, after a certain level of once my body gets loose. So, but initially it can be, so it's important, especially if you're older, that's important to get that body loose. But for everybody in general, just break that sweat, get your body feeling loose, smooth, like the flow is there. And then you don't need to kill yourself after that. Just do what you need to do to keep that sweat and time it appropriately to when you're going to go on the mat. So that's just some of the few primary things we want to talk about with the professional and practical matters: the cost, the price, what you need to do as far as your job, business, all those things, very important. The next thing we're going to talk about is training partners and trainers. Okay. If you're already at the point where you decide you would like to compete, well, you're likely training already on a regular basis with your training partners. So as soon as you confirm everything with your head coach, you need to line up regular training partners and trainers and coaches. Okay. And you want these people to be able to work with you as much as possible to help prepare you for the event. Make sure to try to get the best quality trainers, possible, best possible training partners possible. That's especially important. And then getting a group of sparring partners who have assorted various styles and strengths and weaknesses. That's very crucial. Try to get your sparring partners, even if the guy is literally like a butt scooter, likes to play guard, or he's more of a wrestler style. Occasionally get them to just throw you a curveball and change up their style a little bit. So that's going to help to kind of produce that little element of unpredictability that you're going to get when you're in actual competition. Because in a competition, you don't always know exactly what the guy's going to do. You could think he's going to hit you with this and he hit you with that, and so on and so forth. Or if you're in the academy, you get used to certain people, they have a certain style, a certain game, certain way they approach things. And that can make it sort of predictable. And by having them throw those curveballs in occasionally, that can work to your advantage. It can also work to their advantage because they can get a little more depth to their game or develop maybe another approach that they can use to win. And again, it's going to help build them up, develop some of the skills they're maybe not as good at, and also kind of create that little level of unpredictability that we get in real competition. So that's the next 2 elements of the Daily Dozen for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dominance that we're going to cover this week. Thank you.
I wish I knew you before when I was a white belt and blue belt, because as you have been mentioning in the last first 3 episodes, we cover now the first 6 elements, right? And I can, as you speaking, I did this like mental exercise, remembering my first time competing, remembering trying to get over, say, excited by listening to hardcore music, whatever heavy metal, to try to get pumped up and get some, whatever strong mindset, and how that didn't work for me. And then I tried to go with a very, not just mellow, but like almost like super, even more kind of like meditation type of music that kept me too under excited, like under aroused. So, when it comes to fighting. So I found my personal, my middle line there, right? My baseline. So it's concentration in my case. Like you said, I like to go to the bullpen concentrate. I don't socialize much. Of course I'm not rude. I don't hate my opponents. I
Yeah.
don't love my opponents. I have absolutely no feelings towards my opponents, even though so many of them are my good friends. I say hi, I'm cordial, but I'm focusing. I'm in a mission. I want to win, and I always see the other person as, another step towards the first place. As far as ingesting anything before I try to keep, like you said, I don't eat too much. I do have a good meal. Granted that I don't have to cut weight because of my weight division, but I have good meal the night before, but nothing that's gonna slow or affect my sleep. But it's something that will help me build glycogen for the next day. So I had the help from the perfecting athletes to become more knowledgeable. And I've done those stupid things like taking some pre-training that I never took before. The day of the event, I'm gonna buy this thing. I'm gonna take this stuff, and then having crazy jitters or getting
Mm,
lightheaded. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep doing uh,
mm,
basic things with moderation and a lot of breathing exercises. Uh, I do some sort of active range of motion type of stretching, or say it's more active range of motion techniques, and that helps me to get ready. So all of you said, I
yeah.
learned over try and error because I never had
Mm,
anybody. Buddha helped me a lot in the beginning up to my purple belt, but after my purple belt, I never had anybody really like mentoring me. Unfortunately, under my former coach, he coached me maybe once from purple to black. I had to go mostly by myself, but it's great that our students, our friends, and whoever's listening or
mm,
watching you with your work, like explaining all of this. It's great that a beginner, somebody that never competed,
yeah.
will have this wealth of knowledge right off the bat. So I
Yeah.
cannot wait for episode 5, and
Yeah.
as we keep progressing.
Yeah,
And
and I think Professor too. If we get anybody on here that's got serious background, and especially the black belt professors and other guys, uh, as they hear this, and some of it may be covered in later episodes in the outline anyway. But it's great that if they want to comment little cool ideas, things that they like to do, or throw something. Because, like I said, we're happy to learn from them. Just if they can learn something from
yeah,
us, great. That's what we're here for. But we're humble, we're open minded, we're willing to. If something's effective, I'll take it from anybody, anywhere. And I don't claim to know everything or
absolutely.
know it all, but that's how you get to know a lot. You get to know a lot by knowing you don't know a lot, and by just having that open minded attitude that if someone does it better than me, I'm like, okay, mine was good, but that's gone. I'll take your way now,
Oh,
and that's
100%.
so we
Yeah.
just want the watchers, the people watching the podcast to know that, hey man, you got something good. We want to know it. Thank you. We appreciate it. We're
Oh,
not gonna. You
whoever,
may be doing it better. They may be doing it better. So that's fine.
100%. I think
Yeah.
whoever, like you said, if you guys are listening or watching to the podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the
Yeah.
notifications button, send your comments, but send us an email. Actually, starting this episode, I've been putting my email and Shihan's email in the description or wherever you're getting this from. But also, I'm gonna actually list our schools if you guys ever want to come visit us, train with us, or join us, or we're not trying to sell our service, but say if you're in our area, in say Springfield, Massachusetts, or Danbury, Connecticut, or maybe even train with the other black belts under us in RMA or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. uh, I'm gonna put the list there so you guys can check, our guys, and come train and cross train. And if you're a competitor, like Shihan said, send us like an email or comment. Hey, I would love to be in your podcast. I think would be it would be an honor for us to have you in. Cool. And so now it's time for the preparedness principles with Shihan Walt, Lysak, and I will go over with you guys what happened. Very simple thing, but it kind of helped me open my eyes. I was in a hotel with my daughter. She's visiting me, and I had to go in a work trip. And we were in a good hotel, nothing special, and we had two rooms, right? So connected. pretty much. And 7 o'clock in the morning, the fire alarm went off. And in a hotel, that was the first time I experienced that. I have fire alarms in my house that, sometimes cooking, they will go off, but nothing was as loud as, this super, uh, uh, you know, super strong sound that was getting inside my ears. Like, it was overwhelming, honestly. So I woke up, honestly, absolutely out of my, say disoriented. Yeah, disoriented, I guess. And I was like trying to find my notebook for some reason. I think like this sound was coming from my notebook that was open because I was working the night before, or my cell phone is going off, so I'm kind of like at that moment I was completely lost, honestly, because I got never, if maybe people in the military, or fire houses or something like that, they are used to that. That was the first time for me. So I opened my door, my bedroom door. My daughter's like, "What's going on?" Right. So then I see the light flashing. I'm like, "Okay, fire alarm. Let's get our stuff, like the basics. Let's get out." So um, I had to find my shoes. I had to find my, my pants. My jacket was cold, and I opened the door to see if people were moving. So I see some guests moving, going down the stairs, and so I told my daughter, like, "Get ready. We need to go outside because we don't know if it's a false alarm or not. I'm not gonna risk." I didn't see any smoke, so that's why I opened the door carefully to see if there was any smoke or any fire. Didn't see that, but saw people moving. And then the last thing was my daughter's leaving, and she goes like, "Should I get my passport?" I'm like, "Yeah, documents." So I had my documents on my pants right away. I didn't have a firearm on me because I was in another state, and we were traveling to Washington D.C., so I didn't want to keep my firearm in a safe inside the hotel or something like that. And so anyway, long story short, I'm like, I need to have a better system for myself. I need to have a way that I always put my pants in a certain way, my shoes next to my pants, my t-shirt, and etc. At home, I know where my firearm is all the times. My side firearm. Um, but I think it's a small preparedness thing that I would love to hear your input. I know you mentioned that you always know where you place your stuff. And another thing I was thinking is I got disoriented when I woke up because this was like, it woke me up like with this super strong sound, like we could barely talk to each other. That's the truth between my daughter and I. But I don't take anything to go sleep. I do have trouble sleeping because neck issues and all of that, but I don't take any medication. I don't use anything. I don't drink alcohol before night. I'm not an alcohol drinker anyway. I like one beer once in a while or one glass of wine, but it wasn't the case. So I was thinking, what about people that maybe take those sleeping aids, strong ones like Ambien or something like that, or I forgot the name, Xanax or some sort of drug that, because some people really need, I guess. But I don't like any drug that creates any kind of habit that I become dependent on. But people could maybe like be on some medication, or some people could be taking marijuana to go sleep, let's say, or people do whatever. So that I was thankfully I don't take those stuff, and but I was thinking like if I was disoriented like that and I was not under influence of anything, I imagine somebody that takes that kind of stuff before they go sleep, and if a case of emergency happens, how that person would be able to act with being conscious enough. So what's your take, Shihan?
I think first of all, I think bringing this up is a great story, great for the listeners, and I think it just shows you the importance of like doing those, like micro analyzing every element of your daily life. Like people think about in martial arts academies, like, okay, what do I do if someone's coming at me with two machetes or a machete in one, a knife in one hand, a stick in the other hand, and all these things that probably never happen. And if you live 50 million years, you probably never run into that in a real situation. But then simple things like what could happen if there was a fire and you had to get out of the house at night, or just if you think of this, analyze your life. Okay, you're going to go to bed at night. I think how many hours per year and how many hours in your lifetime you spend sleeping. So you're going to be doing that a lot on a bed regularly. It's not like how many times do you fight another guy with a knife? Or you pull your firearm out and have to use the firearm to protect yourself. Not that can't happen and we shouldn't train for that, but realistically that, those things just aren't common, and they can fit into those. That, in other words, that knife could be used maybe if you're woken up, from your sleep, whatever the case would be. But analyze those things. So, what do I do before I go to bed? What would I, what am I doing while I'm sleeping? What would I be able to do if I, was woken up or something happened? What are the types of emergencies that can happen? How prepared am I for those? When I wake up, where do I go? So analyzing every little part throughout your day. When you're in your car, what do you have in your car available to you as a weapon? How do you drive? I mean, people don't even think how they drive. There's certain ways you can drive strategically with your vehicle that literally stop people from pulling out into you or in front of you, and just being aware of those things all the time. So analyzing how do you drive when you get to work, knowing that job site perfectly inside and out, where your weapons are, where your escape routes are. Nobody should beat you in your home. I always tell people you should be the master of your domain, the master of your castle. Nobody should be able to outdo you in your castle. That's just no way. And then whether it's on your travel route to work, some people drive to work and never become aware of possibilities of if they had to pull over, what they could use for cover, where potential weapons are, or things, all these things that you're analyzing if it's you're walking or out driving. My dad used to have us do things where he would just take us for a run. We'd run, and he'd be like, weapon. And all of a sudden when you first did it, you'd be like, you grab the weirdest things. You grab some twig or something. Then eventually, though, he got you going. You'd be running, and you're just running, and you're seeing rock, stick, bar, this, that. You see all these potential, because you start to become aware, even though you're not like you don't have that critical focus on one thing or the other. You're using diffuse vision, but you're aware as you're running. You're aware of your environment, where find cover, So he would kind of do that, so we could just any old time. It didn't even have to be in a run, just any old time. Weapon, just say weapon. You got to find something, not that's like that you maybe have on you, like a tactical folder or firearm, but something that could be an improvised weapon or makeshift weapon around you. You look at the situation with the guy with the hatchet in the restaurant, I believe it was in McDonald's, and I think it was in New York City. And people aren't thinking of things. They're thinking of like dealing with the guy, but not putting chairs between them or barriers, or maybe breaking a window so you can escape the building or go through an exit route. They just get so tunnel vision, that tunnel vision and critical focus on that person, that they're not thinking of those things. So always analyze. You're in that restaurant. You're not just in that restaurant to eat. You're in that restaurant and you're prepared. You've already considered where you sit, why you're sitting there, what possible weapons are available to you, what weapon do you have on you as a combat specific weapon, what are some potential improvised weapons, what are escape routes, do you have certain words with your family and friends, like say switch gears, which means once you say that, they know you've taken an active role as the leader of the group and you're going to get everybody to safety, but they have to follow what you say no matter how much you've been arguing. So my whole point is that the way what you're saying, bringing this point up of analyzing every little element, that is real self-defense. That is real personal protection or interpersonal protection and preparedness at the highest level. My dad used to do things like, we'd be sleeping and he just opened the room and go up. I mean, and you're a little kid and you get up out of the bed and what it got to the point, I'm not kidding, and he want you to get like an attention like your soldier. It got to the point where he could just touch that doorknob and I'd be up and he'd open the door and he'd look and he goes, that's what I want. So he just literally just click any little, I'm not joking, not to sound mystical or anything, but it really got to the point where I felt like I was like sensing it. Not even, I could just, you know what I mean? And I can't, it's fine. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe it's not. I'm not trying to sell any mystical chi or key or this or that. I'm just saying it really got to the point where it almost did seem like that from doing it so much. Like when you grapple, certain things become second nature. There's really not a lot of conscious thought involved. It's just like, I almost felt like
create a sense of awareness that it was going to happen. Like we condition ourselves, which actually, if we think about, I always sleep with my bedroom, of course, all my doors locked, alarm on, but also my bedroom is locked. And this is something that I always make sure that my bedroom is locked, because that will get me some time, right? And I think like the first thing you would hear would be a doorknob being tried, right? Or, of course, it could be just somebody like kicking your door down. But definitely, I think like it creates a good habit if you hear the doorknob. I think unconsciously, I guess
Yep.
that's what he was doing, like training you guys to
Yeah.
have this perception. And the cue sound
Yeah.
is some check, check, check. That's the door moving, right? And some people like they would
Yeah.
do any less.
Yeah.
Um, I maybe in the future I can even talk about my grandfather's experience being a work prison during the Second World War and things that he had to do as far as preparedness to make sure that his stuff wouldn't get poisoned or whatever food he had left, but kind of stuff like that. But the
Yeah.
point is,
Mm.
I've seen
Yeah.
him, and of course because of PTSD and trauma after that, even when he came to live with us, how he would put maybe a can on top of the doorknob, so inside his bedroom somebody opens, the can would
Yeah.
fall maybe with
Yeah.
a can full of coins, kind of like almost like tripwire type of stuff, like
Yeah.
booby traps.
Yeah. 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 Well, you think that, I love that. I mean, I love that. And that, like my dad, I know he would, when my dad shower, he takes a bread bag and he has his Derringer,
Mhm.
and now Derringer doesn't have the trigger guard, right? So he puts that and he hangs it next to him while he's showering. So literally, he could just grab the trash bag. You could pull the trigger and it's going to shoot obviously right through the bag. But now
Mhm.
you got a firearm
Yeah,
even right when you're in there
yeah,
showering. Like how many people would think of something that simple, and
yeah,
it's not expensive, it's cheap. It's not like something you got to go and pay like whatever. You just put it in the plastic bag, you tie it up. He's got it hanging out. He got it hanging on a thing. If someone came in and even when he's showering, he's got that. You don't even have to get out or reach out. It's right in there with you, and it's not
yeah.
going to get affected. You don't keep it in there, obviously, but while he's showering. So again,
Oh,
that's another
absolutely.
time when people can be really vulnerable. You can be more vulnerable than other times
Oh, no.
during
So I
that.
think the message for the preparedness
Yeah,
principle, we can break that down more, but in the future. But at least for this
yeah,
just quick topic is, like you said, let me see if I understood you, correct me, and then it can help our listeners and everybody watching. Maybe go over those minor everyday situations, right? So, like I said, in my home,
yeah,
I and like for instance, it could be like some people that love to go sleep naked. You forget yourself like by surprise, butt
yeah.
naked. I
Right,
mean, chances of you defending yourself are going
right.
to be like, I don't know. It can affect, but kind of small little things. Where what is your routine?
Yeah,
Not to have OCD, but have a routine where you will leave your clothes for the next
yep,
day prepared, right? And then
exactly.
keep your
Yeah,
firearm always in the same place if you carry a firearm, or flashlight, right? So have a flashlight next to
yeah,
your nightstand, kind of things like that.
yeah,
For me in the hotels, um, of
yeah,
course, I always make sure that we have all those locks. We put all the different type of security stuff, but it could be a case of a fire, an emergency, or something that you need to get out in a pinch. So I think that's a great
yeah,
basic lesson for everybody.
yeah. Yeah, and that is true. I always do that. I always have my shoes and my socks in my shoes. Then I have my pants laying on something. I got the underpants on top of them. Then I got the shirt right on top, so I know I can just go boom, 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 and follow that exact. Even though
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sleeping in something, I'm not sleeping, but I'm saying I have everything
yeah,
laid out for the next day. Even my next clothes for the next
yeah,
day, exactly what I need.
yeah,
It's already laid out, planned. It makes my day start quicker too, but it also is quicker if I have to get out, like you said, get dressed up, and or you could just wear what you're wearing. A lot of times, you just put the socks and shoes on. But if you, depending on what you're sleeping in, but again, just having it prepared, like you said, already thinking that through, just everything, like you say, could
hmm
be your habit of when you go to the gym or when you go to the grocery store. Think those especially common parts of your routine through in a really detailed way all the time. Just always consider, escape routes, cover, improvised weapons, how you can put your combat specific weapons into use. Just and again, we call that I'll call one thing important our 24/7 warrior mindset. So if I ask most people, how many hours a day do you train? I do this all the time when I do seminars, and they'll say, how many hours a day? I've got to go, well, 1 hour a day. Go, what about you? 2 hours. What about you? 4 hours a day. Okay. You're gonna change that. From now on, you train 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Because training is not just punching, kicking, grappling, lifting weights, doing CrossFit, so on and so forth. Training is awareness. So if you prepare yourself to be prepared all the time, whether you're sleeping, whether you're getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I always literally be the point. I'm a little baby over the top. Where I always, if the curtains were closed in the shower, I'd always look behind shower curtains, whether I go in my house or someone
No,
else's house.
no,
It's just the way my brain
no,
works. I'm a little, maybe
no.
it seems like I'm a little over the top, but better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Um, all right, so I think it's time for the RMA Warrior Principles, and let's see what you brought today.
Okay, guys. So now we're going to go into the next Reality Warrior Principles, and this week we're going to actually be talking about we call the 7 ranges of combat. Now, don't confuse the 7 ranges of combat with the 7 main arsenal tools, which are striking, grappling, biting, eye attacks, body handles, nerve attacks, and environmental weaponry, whether it's combat specific, conventional weaponry, or unconventional weaponry, which is like improvised type weapons. Although those 7 main arsenals will be used to a great degree within these various 7 ranges of combat. So the 7 ranges of combat are these. The first one is the psychological range. The second one is the outside range. The third one is what we call the kicking range. The fourth one is what we call upper body extended range, also known as boxing range. The next one, the fifth one, is the close quarter range, or some people call it trapping range. And then the next range is what we call the grappling range, which has 2 categories, A and B, combat specific. A and B, which is stand-up grappling and ground grappling. So you have stand-up grappling where you got your throws, your takedowns, your clinch, so on and so forth, and then your ground grappling, like we would use a lot on the ground in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Sambo, catch wrestling, so on and so forth. And then the final range is grounded defense range. So I'm going to explain each one of these to you briefly at this point. So let's start with the psychological range. Psychological range doesn't go outward toward your opponent. It goes inward into yourself. So this is really what's inside us, what's happening inside our mind, what's happening inside our head, overcoming fear, anger, anxiety, kind of allowing ourselves to make sure that we can do what we need to do when we need to do it. So considering everything that happens within you, considering that inner range, going not just outward toward your opponent, but inward to yourself. Remember that Dan Millman quote we keep saying, when faced with just one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. So you have to make sure that your abilities don't just move toward your opponent, but move inward to yourself, and that you've addressed those issues so that you're able to do what you need to do when you need to do it. So that's the psychological range of combat. And then the next range is the outside range. Outside range is basically anything beyond the physical. If I can't reach you with my foot by kicking you, or my hands punching you, or grabbing you to grapple you, I'm in the outside range. Now, this is still a combat range. I mean, everything from somebody launching a missile from one country to another, not necessarily a great thing to bring up right now, but obviously that's an example of outside range as far as they could launch it, right? But outside range could be throwing a rock at somebody, throwing a chair at somebody, using a long pole or a staff, using a firearm, throwing dirt in their eyes. These are things that you could do from beyond the physical range with your feet or hands or to grab or to kick or punch, so on and so forth. But you still can be effective as a warrior. So the outside range could be a firearm, could be a projectile, could be any of these types of things, extended weapon that we can use when we're too far from an opponent to use our physical body, but we can still attack them by means of these types of options. Okay, so that's the outside range. And it can go, like I said, as far as from one country to another with a missile, or it can go as a little closer where you're hurling a chair at somebody or a rock at somebody, or again, using a firearm, so on and so forth, long pole or staff to attack them with. This is your outside range. Then you have your kicking range. Kicking range is where I'm close enough to reach you with my feet or legs, but not close enough to reach you with my hands. Now we move in closer. I get a little closer where I can reach you with my hands. I can extend out and punch you, but I can't necessarily hit you with my elbows. So when I get to the range where I can hit you with my hands but not punch you, that's upper body extended range, also known as boxing range. Now when I move a little closer and I haven't secured constant contact or control of you, but I'm a little closer and I can range where I can use elbows and headbutts and knees, this is what we call the close quarter range, or the trapping range. And again, this is a very effective range, again, for executing elbows, knees, headbutts, although there's other things we can integrate in there as well. And then when we move and we grab onto an opponent, when I grab onto my opponent, lock onto his neck, lock onto his body, this is your grappling range. And I can be grappling on my feet, stand-up grappling with a person where I can execute throws, takedowns, headbutts, knees, bites, eye gouges, all these things, especially if we're thinking it from the perspective of reality clinch fighting. Or I can take the person to the ground, and then when I get to the ground, same thing. I still have all my grappling options of position, control, transition, and submission. But I also have my striking options, elbows, knees, so on and so forth. Also headbutts, which would be not allowed in a lot of modern-day sport-type ground fighting. And then we'd have like other things I can integrate: weaponry, edge weapons, improvised weapons, firearms, so on and so forth. So realize that when you get to the grappling range, you have a lot more options once you've locked onto that opponent. You can still, just because I'm in grappling range, you can see that I can still punch. Now we might call Boxing range is primarily range where you can reach with your hands, but I can't elbow you. But grappling range offers us a lot of options. Pretty much all of the 7 main arsenals are potentially available to us in grappling range. So again, grappling range is two parts: stand up and ground. And then the last range we call grounded defense. You've oftentimes seen this probably in MMA where one person gets knocked down or the person gets up out of their guard. One guy's still on the ground, the other guy's on his feet. The guy that's on the ground is doing what we call grounded defense. What he can do from there, he can fight from that range by using various up kicks and different types of techniques, circling and moving with his opponent. He can use that to maybe lure his opponent to protect himself till his opponent comes into his guard and fight from the ground. Or he can use that position to keep his opponent at a distance, at bay, make him tentative about coming in on you, and then use a tactical get up to be able to get back to his feet and bring the fight back up to the feet. So those are basically your 7 ranges. Again, the psychological range, what's going on in here? It's going inward. Then the outside range, anything beyond the physical, where I can't reach you with my body, but I could use a firearm, extended weapon, projectile of some sort. Then I get a little closer. Now I can reach you with my feet and legs. That's your kicking range. I get a little closer. I can reach you with my hands. That's your boxing or upper body extended striking range. I get a little closer. I can use my elbows, knees, headbutts, things like this. That's your close quarter or trapping range. I grab onto you in the clinch standing. That's your stand-up grappling range. We go to the ground. That's your ground grappling range. Now, just because I'm in ground grappling range doesn't mean I can't use ground fighting skills. It's just the range. And then if somehow I'm left on the ground or knocked to the ground, I could wind up on the ground in any number of ways. I could slip and fall. I could get hit, knocked down. I could get taken down by my opponent, and he could get back up. However, I wind up on the ground. I'm on the ground, but he's on his feet. That's grounded defense range. Again, I can use this to fight from this range. I can use that to lure him into a grappling type fight, or I can use this to get back to my feet. So these are the 7 ranges of combat. Be sure that you develop your specific skills within each one of these ranges, that you're able to flow naturally, smoothly, synergistically between all these ranges, and then to as much greater degree as possible, integrate your 7 main arsenal tools into these 7 ranges as they're available based on whatever range you happen to be in.
It's just so good. I love this life because this week, I've been talking, the theme of the training, not in self-defense, but just regular grappling jiu-jitsu in our school, has been actually this month. We're talking about a taller, lanky person fighting a shorter person that can kind of like be more compact, pressure, shutting down hips. For who knows jiu-jitsu probably will understand what I'm talking about. And then I mentioned exactly that scenario where you have a standing person and you have a down person, say, playing guard. Pretty much what you can do is use mostly your legs, right, to brace, control. And we talk about controls and how to even grip people, but also how to flip a situation. And then I was explaining some scenarios in jiu-jitsu really don't translate to MMA, right? Because I'm not going to use any choke that needs a cloth, right? Like gi or uniform, a jacket or anything like that in MMA. But sometimes that technique works for, for the streets, like for self-defense. And then in this case, everything that I showed would work in jiu-jitsu gi, no gi, MMA, and self-defense. And it's exactly this scenario, because as you're mentioning, the ground defensive, like, when you're in that situation, and actually happened to one of my students back in the day, police officer. I think I mentioned the story before, but just shortening the whole story, he pulled over a guy as he got the information of the guy, and then he's walking towards his car. That was back 2004. The guy opened the door, tackled him. The guy the driver was just standing, trying to reach him with strikes or maybe grab his weapon. And he was down with the legs up, kind of basic instinct that we develop in jiu-jitsu. And he managed to flip the situation and arrest the guy. But it was a very interesting scenario that translates exactly to the last, range you're saying. Well, so we're introducing the quote of the week.
Yeah.
Do you have one?
I do, Professor. You want me to go mine first, or
I can go with mine while you're doing yours.
Okay.
So, I really like Carl Jung, so I read a lot about his work and his books, and I love this one. And he says, quote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I do study a lot of psychology as a hobby, and I love to read books. And one of the things that it helped me in my individuation process is like the process when you're trying to become yourself. Individuation, I guess that's the name of the process. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, you guys tell me. But one huge part of it is to embrace your shadow, right? He always talk about not denying your shadow, but incorporating it, because that's a lot of what I feel is a lot of people, they denied some aspects of their personality or their selves, because those are like dark areas. But you have to acknowledge those things to kind of incorporate so you can be a complete person, and having those things under control, acknowledging them, and etc. But not only that, is like this search for your true self, like he says. So there's an ongoing process, and I feel like there's no end to your process of developing the best version of yourself by understanding as much as you can, what is visible in your conscious level to your, individual unconsciousness, and then the collective, of course. But that's my quote.
Nice. I love it. And I think it's great because we spend so much time on these podcasts talking about principles and concepts and strategies and things like that. And it's the people that come on here that are wise enough to know that preparedness and personal protection, interpersonal protection, is so far beyond just punching, kicking, beyond the physical. And I think a lot of people don't get that. In fact, that kind of ties in a little bit to what my quote of the week is, which is from Miyamoto Musashi. He says, when you attain the way of strategy, there will not be one thing you cannot see. And then he says, you must study hard. When you attain the way of strategy, there will not be one thing you cannot see. You must study hard. So attaining the way of strategy, understanding these strategies and principles and concepts, and not just knowing how to do combat, not just being physically capable of engaging in combat, but really understanding combat. Because when you understand combat, every move your opponent make means something. Everything they do, every little facial expression, everything they say, all these things add up to something. When you're able to understand that and decode that or more quickly than someone else, it's easier for you to execute the best strategy to deal with the person, And so I think that's interesting,
I love it.
And it lines up even what you said too. I like what you said too, and I think that's another thing, becoming like who you really are. I think the difference with both of us is there's a lot of ways that I've had lots of opportunities in my martial arts career to quote unquote sort of like have opportunities where people will sort of give you the opportunity to make a lot of money and sort of sell out. I just can't do it. I'd rather be poor. I'd rather not have much. I'd rather be or whatever. I mean, it's not if I had money, great. I'm not, like Zig Ziglar said, people that say they don't want money would probably lie about other things too. But my point is not that I don't want it. I just don't want it the wrong way. And I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to compromise my values and what I stand for to attain it. So I think that's what I loved about your quote too, was just that sort of being true to yourself and becoming who you really are and who you really are. In other words, this is who I am. Like, I know with reality martial arts, I always tell people, I'm not a Sento guy. I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy. I love jiu-jitsu, love Sento, love kickboxing, love Jolas. I said, I'm a reality fighter, a reality warrior who will do whatever it takes to protect myself and my loved ones. And I totally take my ego, extract my ego and style preference or any of that stuff from everything I do and just focus on efficacy, being effective and efficient, And if I could just say one thing you said earlier about the gi and sometimes no gi, that's one thing I do want to address too, because you got a lot of guys, it's so funny nowadays, how they'll say, like with jiu-jitsu, that you're not to do gi, that's less realistic and blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God.
What do they mean by realistic? That's the first question I want to ask you. What do you mean by realistic? So what they usually mean when they say it's more realistic is they mean that it's not as appropriate towards MMA, but MMA is not reality, first of all. Second of all, a gi is more like what I'm wearing now and what you're wearing now. When is the last time you've seen two guys in a street fight in their underpants fighting each other, which is pretty much what I love MMA. I'm a big fan. Like I said, I was at UFC 1. I was in the corner of Maurice Smith when he beat Mark Coleman for the title. But the truth is when it comes to jiu-jitsu versus MMA, jiu-jitsu actually is a little more realistic, because if you're with the gi than the no gi, because again, two guys in their underpants fighting each other like in MMA, that doesn't happen very often in the street. Much more likely you can have a jacket or a shirt or pants, something like that. Then and you should do both. I say you should do gi and no gi for sure. However, they both give you certain added advantages that the other doesn't, and definitely both can help you with reality-based element of your grappling.
Or I would love to talk about that maybe when we finish the BJJ Daily Dozen, just because exactly I do believe we share the same mindset. Anybody that wants to say like I'm really doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you should be aware that if you're not doing gi, you're not doing real Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're doing grappling.
No.
If you're only doing gi, you're not doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're just doing gi. If you're only doing self-defense, you're not doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So in a Brazilian, talking specifically about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, about self-defense or reality, because if it's reality, you need way more. You need those three things and more. Way more. We talk about 7 max, so we know that. So we have maybe just one component from, but the real, if you want to say that I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, real Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you have to understand the 3 realms in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Gordon Ryan is an amazing competitor. Fantastic. I know he could do amazing with the gi. He's a grappler. He's not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. Guys that only trains with the jacket and the pants, uniform, amazing. But it won't translate in some scenarios, like you're saying, right? A guy with the tank top in the summer having to defend yourself, you're not going to have those gripping, the cloth to grip. But us, Northeast, and so many people, police officers, especially because police officers can get grabbed by, even if they're not grabbing somebody with a jacket, they could get their vest grabbed and used as, a hooking point to, so the criminal could like punch a guy. Just, it's a hard thing to break. So if you know how to break grips, that might help. So I do share that mindset in 100% with you. And that's just one realm, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, with the 3 sub realms, let's say, subcategories. But I feel like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you need to have all of that. And if you know self-defense based on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu only, you cannot say that you're a complete defense kind of person, because you missing reality. And reality is what you just said about the ranges, the arsenals and all of that. So I think that's so much to develop. And for the next episode, I'm gonna just add one more block, because I know you are just throwing this idea right now on air. I know you have so many books. I know you read, and you have a whole library of martial arts and etc. and other things. So maybe we can, and I like to read. I don't read as much as you, but I have read many books. So why not? We could recommend some books starting on the next episode. Have the last one.
Sounds great.
One episode, you tell what you would recommend. I would tell what I would recommend. I will always say, like me as a Christian, I would say the Bible first and everything. You guys, but it's up to you guys. And again, anything else would you like to bring up, or we're wrapping up?
I mean, like I said, I want to make sure it's clear that when we get off, the people that are maybe the more no-gi guys, I'm stressing you need all of them. So we weren't putting down no-gi. I'm just saying that when they say to do one or the other, it's all about the gi or it's all about no-gi. Like you said, you could be fighting with shorts and a t-shirt, could be fighting with just shorts like you do in MMA, could be fighting in gi. I think all of them are fine. They all have a place and all can help your growth. But, and like you said, beyond that, there's the self-defense element. There's, and a lot of times the people practice the jiu-jitsu that wouldn't cross over well to MMA or the Aikido. Or they practice it maybe that isn't relevant considering how you do things in the street, the legal moral. So it's just having that because I think the founders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, clearly had a little bit of a different perspective than what a lot of people have nowadays. And I think that if you're
100%.
going to call it that, you should show respect for that, or like you said, maybe call it something else.
Yeah, even as far as I know, my interactions with Helio Gracie when I used to organize some tournaments in my hometown, and he came a few times, maybe 2 or 3 times, and we had a good conversations. I can ask the other Gracies, of course, because they will have a better
Yeah.
information. But he was not so a big fan of the point system in jiu-jitsu competition. And just a quick thing here, we can develop in the next episode is like the way that I see and the way that maybe I cannot quote exactly who taught me that way, or maybe I cannot picture exactly when this thought was created in my head, but I do believe that training with the uniform, because there's so much friction and grips on cloth, does help so much your defensive skills. And I do believe that no-gi, because we don't have how to grab cloth, so we need to grab pretty much skin, right? Hooking points in the body, right? The right position, where the right way to grab a wrist or behind the elbow, and underhooks and all of that. And because most of the time when we're grappling people no-gi, we all get sweaty and it's slippery. I do believe that training no-gi will help your attacks and your holds, because it's easier to slip out, especially if you're training on mats. I used to train Brazilian mats that was so slippery. After we were almost like in a skating, ice skating on that. So I do believe gi will help your defensive skills, and I do believe that no gi will help your offensive skills. So that's a quick food for thought.
They're both very important.
Yeah.
Both very important. And I want to make sure that we weren't coming across
like
we're putting one. I just think they're both very necessary. That was my key point.
Guys, again, thanks so much. Please hit the subscribe button wherever you're getting this, especially on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all these other podcast vehicles that you find there. Put your rating, because the ratings help the visibility. It helps the algorithm to start like showing what we're doing. We're doing this for you guys, for our community, and for everybody else that we can help. Anybody that can benefit from this wealth of knowledge that Shihan brings. And I'm not as wise, but I do have some experience, and I have a lot of questions. We do have a lineup of people. I know Shihan will have his lineup of people that we want to bring in. I have my lineup of people too. And I think we're going towards a great 2023 with this format. I think it can help so many people. It can empower so many people. It can inspire so many people, especially when it comes to people trying to become their truly, self, their true self, right? So that's what we're talking about. And thanks so much, Shihan, again. See you next week.
Thank you, Professor.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.